At 7:37 on a Monday morning, the children of General Santos City were already on their way to school. Street vendors were opening their stalls. Workers were walking through city doors for the start of another week. And then, the ground lurched. In a matter of seconds, a magnitude 7.8 earthquake, the most powerful to strike the Philippines in over 35 years, tore through the island of Mindanao. Buildings that had stood for decades shuddered, cracked, and came down. Glass rained into the streets. People ran. Sirens followed. By the time the shaking stopped, the damage was already catastrophic. At least 19 people are confirmed dead. 12 more are missing. Over 200 have been injured. And the death toll is still rising as rescue teams work their way into collapsed structures across the region. Tsunami warnings went out almost immediately, reaching as far as Taiwan, Japan, Guam, and Papua New Guinea. Coastal communities across southern Mindanao had minutes to evacuate to higher ground. This was not a minor tremor. Scientists are calling it the strongest earthquake to hit the Philippines since 1990. And the city that took the worst of it, General Santos, home to over 700,000 people, was still reeling hours later. In the next 15 minutes, we will walk through exactly what happened and when. We will look at the human toll, the hospitals forced to operate in parking lots, the schools reduced to rubble, and we will explain why this specific stretch of ocean floor has always been one of the most dangerous places on Earth for exactly this kind of disaster. Stay with us, because there is one part of this story about what the seismic data showed in the minutes after impact that most coverage has not fully explained. The earthquake struck at 7:37 in the morning, local time in the Philippines. For viewers in the United States, that is Sunday evening, 7:37 Eastern Time, the night before the news broke. The epicenter was located approximately 16 miles southwest of Cablalan, in Sarangani Province, in the Soxsargen region of southern Mindanao. It sat roughly 8 miles offshore from General Santos City, putting it directly beneath a stretch of seafloor in the Celebes Sea. According to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, known as PHIVOLCS, the quake registered at magnitude 7.8, with a focal depth of approximately 20 miles beneath the ocean floor. The United States Geological Survey independently confirmed a similar reading, placing the depth closer to 34 miles. Variations between agencies in the immediate aftermath of a major quake are common and expected. At that depth, intermediate, not shallow, seismic energy traveled efficiently through the crust in all directions. The shaking was not confined to the epicenter area. It radiated outward across hundreds of miles. In Malapatan, Sarangani Province, the closest point to the epicenter, instrumental shaking reached intensity 8 on the Philippine scale. General Santos City experienced intensity 7. Davao City, Cotabato, Zamboanga, and parts of Leyte, some over 300 miles away, all felt the tremors. Within minutes, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued an urgent bulletin. Initial projections were alarming. Waves of up to 10 feet were considered possible on Philippine coasts. Warnings went out to Indonesia, Malaysia, Taiwan, Japan, Guam, and Papua New Guinea. The center confirmed there was no threat to Hawaii or the continental United States. But then, the actual wave data started coming in. Tsunami gauges told a more measured story. A monitoring station off Sulawesi, Indonesia, recorded a wave height of about 2.7 feet. Coastal areas of Sarangani, Sultan Kudarat, and Davao Oriental measured inundation reaching up to 4.6 feet in some locations. Serious, but below the catastrophic levels initially feared. The tsunami warning for the Philippines was lifted approximately 5 hours after the main event. By that point, the ground had already been shaking for hours. Over 138 aftershocks had been recorded. The strongest, a magnitude 6.7, struck in the hours after the initial quake, sending people who had just returned to their homes back into the streets. By mid-morning, the scale of the disaster was becoming clear. The confirmed death toll stood at a minimum of 19 people, according to Rappler and local Philippine authorities. Other reports, citing ongoing rescue operations, put the figure as high as 32. More than 200 people were injured. 12 remained missing, all within the Sox-Sargin region, as rescue teams continued to work through debris. General Santos City took the hardest hit in terms of both lives and infrastructure. 7 people were confirmed dead in the city alone. Approximately 130 others were injured there. And in the city center, at least 2 significant structures had fully or partially collapsed. A donation center on one of the main commercial streets was reduced to rubble. A multi-story building housing a Jollibee restaurant and the broadcast studios of Love Radio came down entirely. Emergency crews worked through the morning, moving concrete and steel by hand, listening for any sign of survivors below. South of General Santos, a high school in Mindanao, Davao del Sur, collapsed during the quake. Fortunately, classes had not yet fully begun for the day. The most troubling single location was St. Elizabeth Hospital in General Santos City. The building sustained severe structural damage. Patients, some of them already in critical condition, were evacuated and moved outside. Doctors and nurses set up emergency treatment areas in the parking lot and surrounding grounds. And they kept working, because even as they treated the injured from the quake itself, more casualties were arriving by the hour. A key access bridge serving the region also cracked and was declared unsafe, threatening to slow the movement of relief supplies and emergency personnel into the hardest-hit areas. Power outages spread across multiple neighborhoods. Families fled into the streets, many in bare feet, still clutching whatever they had grabbed on the way out. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. responded quickly. He ordered the cancellation of classes across all affected provinces and activated the Office of Civil Defense and the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. He also directed the Department of Public Works and Highways to immediately begin clearing routes for rescue and relief teams. Along the coast, residents received urgent instructions. Go to higher ground now. Do not wait for confirmation. Some families had less than 10 minutes to act before the first waves arrived. But to understand why this particular earthquake caused the level of destruction it did, you have to go deeper than the event itself. You have to look at what is underneath southern Mindanao. The Philippines does not sit on stable ground. It never has. The archipelago occupies one of the most geologically active positions on Earth, at the intersection of the Philippine Sea Plate, the Eurasian Plate, and several smaller tectonic blocks. This collision zone is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a roughly 25,000-mile arc of subduction zones and volcanic systems that encircles the Pacific Ocean. The Ring of Fire generates approximately 90% of the world's earthquakes. It is responsible for 3/4 of its active volcanoes, and the Philippines sits squarely inside it. Southern Mindanao specifically lies above the Cotabato Trench, a deep subduction zone where the Philippine Sea Plate slowly dives beneath the Eurasian Plate. The descent is gradual, roughly 3 inches per year. But stress is not gradual. It accumulates over decades, over centuries, until the fault can no longer hold. When it releases all at once. The June 8th quake originated at a depth of approximately 20 miles. In earthquake science, that is called intermediate depth. Here is why it matters. A very shallow quake, say 3 to 5 miles deep, concentrates its energy in a small area and causes extreme local destruction. A very deep quake, over 70 miles, dissipates much of its energy before reaching the surface. An intermediate quake does neither. It distributes powerful shaking across a very large area. It is the reason people felt this earthquake from Leyte to Zamboanga. And here is the part most news coverage is not fully emphasizing. A magnitude 7.8 is classified as a major earthquake, one category below a great earthquake, which begins at magnitude 8. But earthquake magnitude does not scale linearly. A 7.8 releases approximately 16 times more energy than a 7.0. 16 times. That means walls and columns that might have survived a smaller tremor were pushed past their structural breaking point in seconds. The Cotabato Trench region has produced damaging earthquakes before, but here is the full historical picture. The last time the Philippines experienced a quake of comparable size was 1990. That earthquake, also magnitude 7.8, struck the island of Luzon. It destroyed large portions of Baguio City. It killed over 2,000 people. The images from that event are still referenced today when scientists discuss Philippines' seismic risk. The 2013 Bohol earthquake, magnitude 7.2, killed 229 people and collapsed hundreds of buildings. That is still considered one of the most destructive quakes in recent Philippine history. The June 8th event exceeds it in both magnitude and geographic scope. And here is one more piece to this puzzle that matters for what comes next. As of the most recent reports on June 8th, rescue and recovery operations are continuing across Sarangani Province, General Santos City, and the broader Sox-Cargen region. The confirmed death toll stands between 19 and 32, depending on the source and the timestamp of the report. Figures are still being updated as search teams reach more isolated areas. 12 people remain missing. Property damage in General Santos City alone has been estimated at approximately 1 billion Philippine pesos. That is roughly 17 million United States dollars, and that number is expected to grow significantly as assessments expand. The tsunami warning for the Philippines has been fully lifted. A brief advisory for Japan's southern coast and outlying islands was also reduced and then removed in the hours following the event. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center confirmed the primary ocean threat had passed within 5 hours of the initial quake. But the aftershocks have not stopped. Over 138 have been recorded since the main event. Scientists and FIVOLCS officials have warned that significant aftershocks, some potentially strong enough to cause additional damage to already weakened structures, may continue for days or even weeks. St. Elizabeth Hospital in General Santos City remains partially operating outdoors. Relief corridors are being cleared by government engineers. Schools in all affected provinces remain closed by presidential order. International aid monitoring has been activated. Relief organizations are assessing needs and beginning to mobilize supplies toward the hardest-hit communities. What happened in Mindanao on the morning of June 8th is something that geologists and disaster planners have anticipated for years. The southern Philippines sits in a seismically inevitable zone. The question has never been whether an event like this would happen. The question was always when, and whether the infrastructure in its path would hold. Today, we got part of that answer. For the people of General Santos and the surrounding communities, for the families still waiting for news of loved ones who remain missing, the work now is not understanding geology. The work is survival, recovery, rebuilding. And that is the kind of work that takes months, sometimes years. We will continue following this story as new information becomes available. Thank you for watching. If you found this report valuable, please hit the like button. It helps our coverage reach more people who want to stay informed. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a breaking disaster update. And before you go, we want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know ever lived through a major earthquake? What were those first few seconds like? Tell us in the comments. Your experience might help someone else understand what to do if it ever happens to them. Stay safe out there, and we will see you in the next one.